This video is sponsored by Tomplay. So going back to before the pandemic, when I was teaching exclusively in person before ever getting into any sort of content creation, I would get some pretty surprised looks sometimes from students and parents when I would explain that I don't always push learning how to sight read to most students. Now, just to be clear, I would never discourage anyone from learning how to read music. I think it's an incredibly valuable tool that can help your playing, your sense of timing, your understanding of the fretboard and music theory in general. But unfortunately, guitar can be one of the hardest instruments to sight read on because the notes are always overlapping across the fretboard. Compared to a piano or a trumpet or even the drums, where there's one option per note on the staff, we can play the exact same note on the guitar in all these different areas across the fretboard, and in the musical staff it looks the same every single time. So that's why us guitar players have tabs, and it is a really helpful system. It's not just a cheat, but a really valuable supplementary system. So when I would have students start off really young, if they're coming in 6, 7, 8 years old, I typically would start them off with a sight reading book. First of all, they're just used to that type of learning in school at that age. Sometimes at 6 and 7 years old, they don't even have favorite types of music yet. They may just know music on the radio or in movies or video games that they watch. So I always started them off with some sight reading, at least for the first little while, just to get them playing some stuff on the guitar and having some fun. Now, if I would have a student come in who's 15 years old, he loves Metallica, and he just bought his first electric guitar and wants to play like Hetfield, I'm not going to start him off on book one and force him to learn Yankee Doodle and the first 3 notes on the first string. Again, I'm not saying it's not valuable, but that's not what the student's interested in, so it's actually just going to push them away from the guitar versus keep them interested and engaged. So today we're going to be looking at one of the most challenging aspects of sight reading and why I highly encourage you to spend some time practicing it and learning it, because it can make a huge difference to your playing, your feel of music, your understanding of timing, and also how to play things physically on the guitar. This is also a huge part of how I'm able to learn music very quickly. A lot of the covers that you see me post on this channel, I learned that day or the day before most of the time. How I'm able to understand the music and retain it is by understanding this part of notation. For today's example, I'm using the website for today's sponsor, Tomplay. It is a great resource for learning how to sight read and also an amazing resource for practicing sight reading. It's actually pretty hard to find good resources with interesting music for you to sight read that also doesn't cost a fortune where you're going out buying 50 different books at the local guitar store. This has over 80,000 scores, all different levels and all different styles. I just noticed they even have Laid to Rest by Lamb of God on here. Talk about having some fun learning how to sight read, playing some Lamb of God. So they have everything from music scores, classical music, pop melodies, rock songs, all the way to metal. I was going through some Beatles stuff earlier, of course. So right now I have pulled up one of the parts from Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. By the way, this song gets a reputation for being like a beginner guitar song, like something you should learn your first couple lessons. This song's a lot more challenging than that, so I don't know why it has this reputation of being a beginner tune. The guitar parts are not only super interesting, but quite challenging to play. One of the main challenges with this piece is the rhythms, and this is what I highly suggest you learn how to read in notation, are rhythms. Because knowing the notes on the staff, knowing that this is an A or this is a D is not that hard. You can teach that to someone within 1 or 2 lessons using the whole face system or Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge. Knowing which note it is on the staff is not the hard part. Again, that doesn't mean it's easy on the guitar because we could play these notes anywhere. But usually in sight reading, one of the hardest things is understanding the rhythms, knowing what all these lines and little black dots and these double lines and everything, what that means, how you should feel that, and even more importantly, how you should play that. I've made some videos in the past and even more on my Patreon page of how to read these rhythms and how to technically play them and how I translate it into my picking. So I highly suggest checking out those videos. But I'm going to use this example to show you how I would learn this passage by using the notation for the rhythms. Because if I go to a website like Ultimate Guitar, where a lot of the times, unless you're using the paid version, it doesn't have the rhythm notation, then you have to totally rely on feel, and there's not really that help of counting your way through things. Now, a lot of times in music, there's nothing wrong with feeling your way through it, but there are absolutely times where you have to count your way through things and be able to kind of translate that into what you're having to play. Good luck learning a Dream Theater song without doing any counting or understanding of the rhythm. So one thing I would do with my students quite often is take rhythms like these and understand how they should be felt and how they would sound, and then you can do some kind of like clapping examples to know how that rhythm should sound and feel. So if I'm able to look at this notation right here, even before I get into the chords, and I'm able to understand the rhythms. That's going to be a huge help when I'm learning this and knowing how those notes should fall into place. Now, another great thing with this site is you can have the accompaniment playing with you. You can put on a click. You can even have the vocals and everything, so you can kind of be part of the track, but you can choose which instruments are playing. You can also control the tempo, so you can slow this right down so you can hear it. Makes it so much easier to practice. You can even record yourself, so you can actually record some takes and come back to it and listen to it to notice your progress. And a really helpful practice thing is the looper. So I can set up these parameters here so that it just loops these 2 bars, and you can just keep going with it. A really helpful practice tool when learning to sight read. And if we use another example, taking a look at part of the solo, this is where having the rhythm notation can be a huge help, because within solos it can be pretty hard sometimes to tell how the notes should fall within the beat. So having the visualization and of course understanding of rhythms to understand how these notes should sound is a huge help when learning this. So if I take a look at bar 37 here, and I'm again able to kind of count or clap my way through the rhythms. So now when I put it onto the guitar, I have a good sense of the timing and the rhythm that those notes should fall into. Now, to be completely honest, when I'm learning pieces like this for covers that you see on the channel, I am using the tabs most of the time. This is where reading stuff on the guitar would be so difficult, because even if you know that this note up here is an F sharp because of the key signature saying F sharps are in the piece, and then it's going to a D and an A, again, you could play those exact same 3 notes in a few different areas on the fretboard, and that's where it becomes so challenging. That's where the tabs is very helpful, where it tells you exactly where it's supposed to be played. So when I go to play that, I have that rhythmic understanding, which helps me huge when it comes to placing it within the beat and knowing how it should feel. So I do highly encourage you to try learning how to sight read and practice it. A great thing with having sites like TomPlay is you can practice interesting melodies, fun sounding things. You don't have to go back to Yankee Doodle and Ode to Joy and all that stuff to get started. So definitely check out TomPlay at the link below. I promise it will have a very positive impact on your playing and your understanding of music. If you found this video helpful, you can check out my Patreon page where I post weekly lesson videos, and you're always welcome to reach out to me with any questions you have. And now it's time for you guys to go practice. I'll see you guys in the next video.